Welcome back to another episode of Test Don't Guess Tuesday. I'm Melissa Halkopacki, your functional gut health expert. I'm going to lead you through a GI map test that one of my clients took. I'm going to give you a little background about her history and her symptoms, what led us to order the test in the first place, and then show you the results and tell you what we did to help her heal. So this client is a 62-year-old mom and new grandmom who doesn't have a whole lot of energy. She came to me mostly for constipation, but in talking, realizing that the constipation is taking up a lot of her mental and physical energy, she's obviously not digesting well and therefore can't produce a lot of energy on her own. She is really feeling like she's starting to slow down at a time in her life where she needs to be speeding up, right? She's now a grandmother. She wants to be active and involved. And so with this baby being a newborn, she's got a little bit of time to get herself in gear before that kid starts walking. So as that child starts growing, she's going to start working on some basic wellness principles and foundational health that will help her to rebuild her energy. But the first thing we needed to do was deal with her constipation. And in order to do that, we ordered the GI map test from digestivediscovery.com. Remember, if you've been having digestive problems, it's always better to test and not to guess. It leads us to answers right away, right? Instead of throwing supplements at you, we know exactly what kind of protocol you need tailored to you based on your symptoms. So without further ado, let's take a look at her GI map test, see what we found, and how we could help her with her overall health goals. Okay, this is her GI map test. The very first page of the GI map test I skipped because nothing was off. Remember that the first page of the GI map test is usually where we find results being off when people have chronic diarrhea or they've suffered from some sort of GI discomfort. They've gone on a trip and drank or ate something that didn't agree to them and they still can't seem to right themselves when they get home. A lot of times we see results on that page. However, that page was clear. This is page 2. This is the opportunistic and overgrowth microbes. And we see here in this very first section, you'll notice that the bacillus is a little high, the staphylococcus is a little bit high, and streptococcus is significantly high. Remember, the way to read this is the middle column is your result and the column on the right is the reference range. So you can still have a positive result, meaning that the DNA of that bacteria was found in your system, just at a lower level than we know generally causes agitation, right? So it's there with the ability to grow if the conditions are right. However, we really ideally would like to see none of these show up. And so we consider as we go through the test, what are some of the substances, the supplements that would knock down some of these dysbiotic bacteria. So here you'll see streptococcus is high. There's a little bit in the next section of commensal and overgrowth microbes. When you do have constipation and your food is sitting in your lower intestines, they will start to ferment. You will start to see these two bacteria grow. Obviously not high, right? Not alarmingly high, not in the red, but she does suffer from some bloating along with her constipation. And so I do expect to see that number there. And there it is. Commensal inflammatory and autoimmune related bacteria, the fourth section down, you'll see all of those lit up a little bit. Again, we don't like to see those because we know that these specific bacteria, Enterobacter, Escherichia, Fusobacterium, and Prevotella, all lead to autoimmune diseases when those numbers get in the red. So this tells me that the situation is ripe to explode. So a little bit more constipation over time, and those numbers could grow, leading to autoimmune disorders down the line, like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, for instance. The next section, fungi and yeast, nothing there. And with viruses, nothing picked up, cytomegalovirus or Epstein-Barr virus. You would see those lit up, had those been a problem for her, but they weren't. Let's take a look at the next page. Here you'll see the test was negative for parasites. I remind everyone that this test rarely picks up parasites, though we all have them. And parasite cleansing is a big part of constipation treatment for many people. However, nothing was picked up here. Intestinal health markers, you'll notice that nothing here is shocking, right? Everything seems to be okay. Steatocrit, meaning how much fat is making its way into her stool, nice and low, right? Under the detectable limit, means it's being processed well. Elastase 1, starting to creep, right? And we know exactly why when I show you the next slide. But when we see elastase going lower and lower, that's the trend here as it heads down into the red, meaning that the digestive system isn't getting the job done. It's a big factor in constipation. When your stomach's not breaking down food properly, it slows the motility of the bowels. That transit time takes longer. Things grow, right? When it takes longer to go through the bowels, it's got more time for bacteria to grow there, and some of that bacteria that wasn't killed in the stomach when your elastase number isn't optimal. GI markers were fine, immune response was fine, inflammation is nice and low. So those are all great to see. I should note that this was a newer problem for her, this constipation, maybe the last 6 to 8 months. She had been fairly regular. She did tend to lead towards constipation. I think all of us can say we either lean one way or the other. Like when we get upset, we tend to have restricted bowels and we get constipated, or we get a rumble tummy. One of the two ways. So she was tending towards constipation. However, this has only been a problem for 6 to 8 months for her. Let's take a look at the next page. Here we see why. H. pylori is high. 1.52 e to the 3. The reference range is just 1 e to the 3. So that's significantly high. She's got an H. pylori issue. For anybody who doesn't know, H. pylori is a bacteria that builds itself into the wall of the stomach, right? It doesn't exist on the whole wall of the stomach. It might be here and here and here, or just in one place, which is why a lot of times it's missed when you've had an endoscopy and they said, oh, they took a look. If they say they took a look and didn't see anything, that's not a complete finding. They have to biopsy. However, understand that if this is your stomach and your H. pylori is living over here and they decide for some reason to biopsy over here, you're not going to see it. So this test, why I love it, is it's a PCR test. It's looking for the DNA of the H. pylori bacteria. And here we go. So wherever it exists in the stomach, it's going to pick it up on this test. You'll notice down in the bottom section, this is the commensal and keystone bacteria, a really important part of this test because it shows us which bacteria are missing or overgrown. For most of us, I tend to see some of these numbers very low. Here you'll see that some of the numbers are high. The Enterobacter and the Rosbergia are high. She has a tendency to overgrow, right? And again, when we see H. pylori, lowering the stomach acid, because it lowers the stomach acid so that it can thrive. It doesn't want to live in an acidic environment. When the stomach acid's low, bacteria doesn't die. Foods don't break down well enough. And some of those good bacteria, those good guys, can overgrow. That's what we're seeing here on this test. Let's take a look at that last page. And this is an important one only if you're going to attempt to treat H. pylori with antibiotics, which I don't recommend. We know that antibiotics really do a number on the gut. And in this case, if we didn't know, if a doctor from the Western world had discovered her H. pylori, perhaps on an endoscopy, and decided they were going to treat her with triple antibiotic therapy, which is the norm in the Western world for H. pylori, it wouldn't work anyway because she wouldn't have any response to amoxicillin, the fluoroquines, or tetracycline. So when we did treat this naturally. Let's talk a little bit about how we did. Okay, so this was her protocol. Number 1, mastic gum. This is what we use. We use it twice a day, 2 caps twice a day. This helps to reduce the H. pylori load. Along with that, I like to start people on digestive enzymes. These are just straight digestive enzymes, but after 1 month on both of these, I switched her to an enzyme that contained HCl. We don't want to use HCl to raise the stomach acid level until we're sure that the level of H. pylori has gone down. A month on mastic gum should do that. using the regular digestive enzymes. Then we pick up with the enzymes with HCl and we try to increase stomach acid. You can also do that with B6 and zinc, two very essential elements for making sure you're forming enough stomach acid. Those were really important. The other thing that we did was biocidin. Biocidin is one of my favorite all-purpose, very wide-ranging, has antibacterial, antifungal properties, really good for bringing down the number of bad guys as well as the overgrowth of the good guys in the gut. So I use the biocidin. I always use a binder. In this case, I think we probably went with something like the Virad Chem binder from Cellcore. And then we worked with her on her constipation by using a daily motility agent, working on stress levels and circadian rhythm, changing her diet gradually, right? As we increase the stomach acid and we get the bowels moving better, those two things have to happen first. Then we can raise the fiber level, right? And have the bowels start taking over on their own, creating that momentum and that daily rhythm. Setting up some morning and evening routines help a lot with that as well. But she did beautifully. 3 months in, I think, and that was it. Bing, bang, done. No more suffering with constipation chronically. When you can figure out what is in your gut, when you take this test, you don't guess. You get answers that you can act on. Otherwise, you're guessing. Otherwise, you're spending $75 on a probiotic, wondering if it's making its way to your colon. Is it even working, right? Do I need digestive enzymes? I'm not digesting well. Or is it safe for me to take digestive enzymes with HCl? Because I'll tell you, if you have H. pylori and you start with HCl, you're going to wind up with a lot of stomach pain. Nobody wants that. So that's the scoop on the GI map. You can run your own at digestivediscovery.com. Within that portal, there's a link. If you want to book a call with me to help you go over your test results, I'm there for you too. But there's plenty of information in the back end for you to discover on your own what's happening with your gut and make some changes for yourself. So this has been another episode of Test Don't Guess Tuesday. I'm Melissa Hall-Klepacki. You can visit me at melissahallklepacki.com or order your own Digestive Discovery test at digestivediscovery.com. Stick around next week. We'll be back for more exciting news from the world of gut health.